Hello, friends. If you're curious about the movie The Nun II, released in 2023, you're in the perfect place. Don't forget to give this video a quick like, it really helps us out. And if you're new here, hit subscribe to stay updated on all the latest movie deep dives. Let's jump right in. In the shadowed corners of 1956 France, a palpable dread looms. The air is thick with whispers of an ancient evil, a malevolent force that has resurfaced to claim the souls of the innocent. The Nun II plunges us back into this chilling world, where faith is tested and darkness threatens to consume all. The film opens in the quaint town of Tarascon. Father Noiret, a devoted priest, tends to his church alongside his young altar boy, Jacques. Their routine is shattered one fateful day when an ominous disturbance beckons them. As they investigate, an unseen force seizes Noiret, lifting him into the air before engulfing him in flames, leaving Jacques to witness the horrifying spectacle. This brutal act sets the stage for the terror that is to follow. Meanwhile, 4 years have passed since the harrowing events at St. Cartha's Monastery. Sister Irene, who once faced the demonic entity Valak and survived, has sought solace in a convent in Italy. She carries the weight of her past, the memories of that unholy encounter etched deeply into her soul. Her days are filled with prayer and contemplation, but the shadows of her previous ordeal are never far behind. In a seemingly unrelated setting, Maurice, affectionately known as Frenchie, has found employment at a boarding school in France. Here, he befriends a spirited young student named Sophie and her mother, Kate, who serves as a teacher. Maurice's demeanor is warm, his presence a comforting constant for the duo. Yet, unbeknownst to them, a sinister force lies dormant within him, waiting for the opportune moment to emerge. Back in Italy, Sister Irene's tranquil existence is disrupted by a haunting vision. She sees Maurice, his eyes pleading, imploring her to save him. The Vatican, aware of a series of gruesome clergy deaths spreading across Europe, summons Irene. They believe that the demon Valak is behind these atrocities and that Irene's unique experience makes her the ideal candidate to confront this evil once more. Accompanied by Sister Deborah, a novice grappling with her own crisis of faith, Irene embarks on a journey to Tarascon. The town is steeped in fear, its residents whispering of the malevolent presence that has taken root. As Irene delves deeper, she is tormented by visions of Valak, the demon nun whose very image evokes terror. Deborah, though inexperienced, proves to be a steadfast companion, her resolve strengthening in the face of mounting horrors. At the boarding school, unsettling events begin to unfold. Sophie becomes the target of cruel classmates who lock her in a deconsecrated chapel. The chapel's stained glass window, depicting a goat, is said to harbor a dark secret. When the sun's rays hit it just right, the goat's eyes glow red, signaling the presence of evil. One night, the school's headmistress encounters Maurice in a trance-like state. Before she can react, a malevolent force overtakes her, leading to her untimely demise. As Irene and Deborah continue their investigation, they uncover a chilling connection. The emblem found on a rosary in Tarascon matches the crest of St. Lucy, a martyr who, according to legend, possessed miraculous powers. It's revealed that Valak is targeting the descendants of St. Lucy, seeking a powerful relic, her incorrupt eyes, believed to hold divine power. This relic was last known to be housed in a monastery that has since been transformed into the very boarding school where Maurice resides. Realizing the gravity of the situation, Irene and Deborah race against time to locate the relic and prevent Valak from harnessing its power. Within the school's ancient walls, they face a series of harrowing challenges. The demon's influence is pervasive, turning familiar surroundings into nightmarish landscapes. Shadows twist into grotesque forms, whispers echo through empty corridors, and the boundary between reality and the supernatural blurs. In a climactic confrontation, Irene discovers the hidden relic. However, Valak, now fully awakened, confronts her. The demon's presence is overwhelming, its power suffocating. As Valak attempts to seize the relic, Irene taps into her lineage as a descendant of St. Lucy. She invokes a prayer, and miraculously, The barrels of wine stored in the room transform into the blood of Christ. This divine intervention weakens Valak, allowing Irene and Deborah to banish the demon, freeing Maurice from its grasp. As dawn breaks, the school stands eerily silent. The horrors of the night have left an indelible mark on its inhabitants. Maurice, now free from possession, is left to grapple with the memories of his actions under Valak's influence. Sophie and Kate, though traumatized, find solace in each other's embrace, their bond strengthened by the ordeal. Sister Irene and Sister Deborah, having faced unimaginable horrors, emerge with a renewed sense of purpose. Their faith, tested and tried, now burns brighter. They understand that while evil may be vanquished, it is never truly gone. The battle between light and darkness is eternal, and they must remain vigilant. The Nun II masterfully intertwines suspense and horror, leading audiences through a labyrinth of fear and faith. The narrative delves deep into the characters' psyches, exploring their vulnerabilities and strengths. The film's atmospheric tension is palpable, with each scene meticulously crafted to heighten the sense of dread. The relationship between Irene and Deborah serves as the emotional core of the story. Their journey from strangers to steadfast allies mirrors the broader theme of faith tested by adversity. Maurice's internal struggle adds another layer of complexity, as he battles the darkness within, seeking redemption. The film doesn't shy away from exploring the darker aspects of faith and the supernatural. It poses profound questions about the nature of evil and the strength required to confront it. The use of religious symbolism is pervasive, adding depth to the narrative and challenging the characters' beliefs. As the credits roll, viewers are left with a lingering sense of unease. The story's twists and turns keep audiences on the edge of their seats, culminating in a finale that is both satisfying and unsettling. The film's haunting imagery and compelling characters ensure that The Nun II will be remembered as a standout entry in the horror genre. In conclusion, The Nun II is a chilling exploration of faith, evil, and the enduring battle between light and darkness. Its intricate plot, combined with atmospheric tension and compelling character arcs, makes it a must-watch for horror enthusiasts. As the story unfolds, it becomes clear that the true horror lies not just in the supernatural, but in the choices we make when confronted with the unknown. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into The Nun II. If you enjoyed this analysis, please give the video a thumbs up and consider subscribing for more in-depth movie discussions. Until next time, stay curious and keep exploring the world of cinema. The film wastes no time in delivering its first dose of terror. A priest, seemingly alone in a vast and dimly lit church, senses an unnatural presence watching him. The flickering candlelight trembles, casting shifting shadows along the grand Gothic architecture. The air grows thick, and the priest whispers a prayer, only for his words to be cut off by an unseen force. His body is lifted, suspended in the air by an unnatural power. In the darkness, two glowing eyes emerge, piercing through the void. The silence shatters with a deafening snap, and the priest's lifeless body collapses onto the cold stone floor. The mark of the demon has been made. This is just the beginning. The horror escalates, as strange deaths plague the boarding school. Unexplainable events send chills through the students and faculty alike. Objects move on their own, whispers fill the halls, and shadows stretch unnaturally along the walls. At the heart of it all, Maurice finds himself losing control, his mind clouded by dark whispers that only he can hear. Sister Irene, along with a young nun in training named Sister Deborah, must piece together the clues before it's too late. As Irene delves deeper, she uncovers an ancient connection between Valak and the very institution where they stand. The demon isn't just tormenting them, it is searching for something hidden for centuries. A relic of immense power, long buried and forgotten, holds the key to stopping the evil once and for all. But as Irene gets closer to the truth, Valak grows stronger, its influence spreading like poison through the school's foundations. The fear in The Nun II isn't just about jump scares, it's about the slow, suffocating dread that creeps under your skin. The cinematography leans into deep shadows, long corridors, and eerie silences that stretch a little too long before being shattered by the terror lurking within. The sound design plays a masterful role, using the absence of noise as effectively as sudden, bone-chilling outbursts. Every creaking door, every whisper in the dark, every flickering light adds to the sense that something is watching, waiting, just beyond the veil. The horror isn't limited to supernatural forces alone. The emotional weight of the characters adds depth to the terror. Sister Irene battles her own fears and doubts, questioning whether her faith is strong enough to face such overwhelming darkness. Maurice, tormented by the growing evil within him, fights a battle he cannot see, a war within his own soul. And the students and staff of the boarding school, innocent bystanders caught in the crossfire, must confront the horrors of a past they never knew existed. As the story unfolds, shocking revelations come to light. The origins of Valak, hinted at in The Conjuring 2 and expanded upon in The Nun, take center stage, weaving together the history of the demon with the world of the living. Sister Irene discovers a personal connection to this fight, one that makes her role in this nightmare far more significant than she ever imagined. The stakes are higher than ever, not just for her, but for the world itself. And then comes the moment the audience has been dreading, the full awakening of Valak's power. What was once confined to shadows and whispers now manifests in full force. The walls of the school seem to shift and twist, the air itself crackling with unnatural energy. Faces distort in the flickering candlelight, eyes glow in the darkness, and an overwhelming sense of doom settles upon the characters. There is no escape. The climax of the film is a heart-pounding spectacle, a collision of faith, fear, and raw, unrelenting evil. Sister Irene must stand against Valak once more, but this time, the demon is stronger, more vengeful, and more determined than ever to claim victory. The battle between light and darkness rages through the halls of the school, culminating in a breathtaking showdown that will leave audiences on the edge of their seats. But The Nun II is not just about the fight, it's about the scars left behind. The terror may end, but the nightmares linger. Evil may be defeated, but its shadow always remains. The film leaves audiences with lingering questions, tantalizing possibilities for what may come next in the Conjuring universe. Has Valak truly been stopped? Or is this just another chapter in a horror that never truly ends? For fans of supernatural horror, The Nun II delivers everything they could hope for. Chilling atmosphere, shocking scares, and a gripping continuation of one of the most terrifying stories in the Conjuring franchise. It expands upon the mythology, deepens the lore, and leaves audiences hungry for more. And as the credits roll, one thing is clear: some horrors refuse to be forgotten. The story begins in 1956, in a small village in France, where an old church stands against a cloudy, overcast sky. Inside, a young altar boy carefully arranges candles on the altar, their warm glow flickering against the cold stone walls. The priest, dressed in traditional robes, walks past the rows of wooden pews, preparing for the evening service. The atmosphere is quiet, too quiet. Suddenly, a chill runs through the air, causing the boy to shiver. A strange presence lingers, unseen but deeply felt. Before the priest can react, the candles flicker out in unison, leaving the church in near darkness. A deep, echoing sound reverberates through the empty halls. The altar boy turns, his wide eyes scanning the room. Then, as if moved by an unseen force, a heavy wooden cross shifts on the wall. A moment later, the church bells begin to ring on their own, though no one is there to ring them. The boy stumbles back, fear gripping his chest. Something unnatural has awakened. Far away, Sister Irene is leading a quiet life, having distanced herself from the chilling events of St. Carta Monastery. But when the Vatican learns of a series of unexplained events happening across Europe, they call upon her once more. Each occurrence seems to share a pattern: strange symbols appearing, whispered voices in the dark, and unsettling disturbances in sacred places. Irene has no choice but to heed the call. Meanwhile, Maurice, affectionately known as Frenchie, has found work as a caretaker at a boarding school in France. To those around him, He is a kind and hard-working man, always willing to lend a hand. The students admire his friendly nature, and the staff values his dedication. However, Maurice has been feeling off lately, plagued by strange dreams and moments of confusion. He doesn't know that something from his past lingers within him, waiting for the right moment to reveal itself. At the school, peculiar events begin to unfold. Books tumble from shelves without explanation. Footsteps echo in empty hallways. A young student whispers to her friends about seeing a figure dressed in an old habit, standing in the shadows. At first, the teachers dismiss these claims as imagination, but the disturbances persist. One evening, the school's chapel doors slam shut on their own, and the large wooden cross shifts slightly, as if responding to an unseen force. Sister Irene arrives in France, accompanied by Sister Deborah, a young woman still finding her path in faith. Unlike Irene, Deborah is skeptical of supernatural occurrences, believing there must be logical explanations for the strange happenings. However, as they begin their investigation, even she cannot deny that something is amiss. Irene, on the other hand, feels an eerie familiarity with the events unfolding. She fears that an old adversary may have returned. Her concerns deepen when she meets Maurice again. Though he appears the same, there is an unspoken weight in his demeanor. He struggles with restless nights, waking up feeling drained, unable to recall his dreams. Mysterious marks appear on his arms, ones he doesn't remember getting. His moments of confusion increase. Sometimes, he finds himself in parts of the school without remembering how he got there. Irene and Deborah dig into the history of the school, hoping to uncover any clues. They discover that the land was once owned by a nobleman with an interest in arcane knowledge. Old records suggest that something of significance was buried on the grounds, a relic tied to the past. Though much of the information has been lost, Irene begins to suspect that this history is connected to the disturbances they are witnessing. As Maurice's condition worsens, his dreams grow more vivid. He sees corridors stretching endlessly, hears faint whispers calling his name. One night, he catches his own reflection in a mirror, and for a brief moment he doesn't recognize the face staring back at him. Irene and Deborah rush to understand what is happening before it's too late. But the presence they are dealing with is no longer hiding. It is waiting, watching, and ready to make itself known. The air inside the boarding school thickens with an unshakable sense of unease. Shadows stretch unnaturally along the stone corridors, and distant whispers seem to echo through the halls when no one is around. Sister Irene and Sister Deborah remain on edge, knowing something sinister is at work, but the full extent of the danger has yet to reveal itself. Maurice, their old friend, is changing, his once warm demeanor growing distant, his moments of disorientation becoming more frequent. The kind caretaker is slipping away, though no one understands why. One evening, a group of students sneaks out of their dormitories, daring each other to explore the chapel. They whisper excitedly as they push open the heavy doors, the flickering candlelight casting eerie shapes along the walls. The school's headmistress, Madame Laurent, had forbidden them from wandering at night, but curiosity proves too strong. As they approach the altar, a gust of wind extinguishes the candles all at once, plunging them into darkness. Their laughter fades into uneasy silence. Then, a sound, a low, guttural growl, rumbles through the space. One of the girls shrieks as a shadow moves toward them, an inhuman presence looming in the darkness. Their screams echo through the school, waking the others. By the time Sister Irene and Sister Deborah arrive, the children are huddled in fear, pointing toward the darkness of the chapel. The air crackles with a strange energy. Irene's gaze locks onto the cross at the front of the room. It has turned upside down. Maurice stumbles onto the scene, his head pounding as if something inside him is clawing to get out. Irene watches him closely, noting the sweat beading along his forehead, the way his fingers tremble. Then, in a sudden moment of realization, the pieces fall into place. The entity that has haunted them, the presence that has been creeping through the school, watching from the shadows, it isn't just here. It's inside Maurice. A memory rushes back to Irene, St. Carta Monastery, the fateful night they faced Valak. Maurice had been the one to help her escape, but he had also been mocked, an unwilling host for something far darker than anyone had realized. The demon had never truly left him. It had been waiting, biding its time. And now it was ready to take control. Maurice's breathing grows shallow as the realization dawns on him. His hands clutch his head, a sharp pain searing through his skull. Then, without warning, his body convulses. He staggers back, eyes flashing with something unnatural. The veins along his arms darken, twisting into grotesque patterns. The thing within him is no longer hiding. Sister Irene steps forward, whispering a prayer under her breath. The air around them grows thick with tension. Maurice's body trembles, his face contorted in anguish. For a moment, it looks as if he might regain control, but then the entity lashes out. A powerful force sends Irene crashing backward. Deborah rushes to help, but objects begin flying across the room as if hurled by invisible hands. The children scream, scrambling for cover as chaos erupts around them. The once gentle caretaker is gone. In his place stands something far more terrifying. With terrifying strength, Maurice moves through the school, his steps slow and deliberate. The demon inside him seeks something, a relic, a source of power buried beneath the school's foundation. Irene remembers the legend she uncovered about the nobleman who once owned the land, his obsession with the supernatural. She realizes now that Valak's presence is no coincidence. The demon is after the relic, and if it finds it, the consequences will be catastrophic. Determined to stop the entity from completing its dark purpose, Irene and Deborah race to the school's archives, searching for any record of where the artifact may have been hidden. The headmistress, though terrified, assists them, revealing an old map of the property. It marks a forgotten passage beneath the chapel, an underground chamber sealed off centuries ago. That's where the relic must be. They descend into the darkness, the air growing colder with every step. The underground chamber is lined with ancient symbols, long since faded with time. At the center of the room, buried beneath layers of dust and debris, lies an ornate chest. Irene knows they have to destroy it before Valak can claim it. But they are not alone. A deep, menacing growl echoes through the chamber as Maurice appears in the entrance, his expression no longer his own. His movements are unnatural, his presence radiating darkness. The entity within him speaks, its voice a chilling distortion of his own. It taunts them, reminding Irene of the horrors she has faced before. But she does not waver. She knows that the real Maurice is still inside, fighting to break free. A battle ensues, one not just of strength, but of faith. The demon is powerful, using every force at its disposal to stop them. The walls shake, the air crackles with an unnatural energy. But Irene and Deborah stand their ground. Armed with their belief and the knowledge that evil can never truly triumph over light, they press forward. Deborah retrieves the holy water as Irene begins reciting a sacred prayer. Maurice stumbles, his body resisting the words. For a moment, he seems to regain control. His eyes flicker with recognition, a desperate plea for help buried beneath the possession. Irene calls out to him, urging him to fight. Then, with one final effort, he does. Summoning the last of his strength, Maurice turns on himself, resisting the demon's hold. It screams in defiance, but the power of faith proves stronger. As Irene and Deborah drive forward with their prayers, the entity weakens, its hold breaking. The chamber trembles as a final, deafening wail echoes through the space. Then, silence. Maurice collapses, his body drained but his soul freed. As dawn breaks over the school, peace returns. The children, though shaken, are safe. The disturbances are gone, and the darkness that had lingered for so long has finally lifted. Maurice, though exhausted, is himself again. He does not remember everything, but he knows one thing for certain. He was not alone in the fight. Sister Irene and Sister Deborah leave the school, knowing that evil never truly disappears, but they also know that as long as faith endures, there will always be those willing to stand against it. The heart of the Nun II lies in its characters, their fears, their struggles, and the battles they fight against the darkness that threatens to consume them. Each one plays a role in unraveling the terrifying mystery at the center of the story, and their journeys are deeply connected to the evil they face. Some are hardened by past experiences, while others are thrown into the supernatural chaos for the first time, forced to confront forces beyond their understanding. Sister Irene stands at the forefront, a woman of unwavering faith and quiet strength. She has seen darkness before, felt its suffocating presence, and survived its relentless pursuit. The memories of St. Carta Monastery, of Valak's terrifying grip, still haunt her, but she has not allowed fear to define her. Instead, it has forged her into someone who refuses to back down in the face of evil. She is no ordinary nun. Her connection to the supernatural is undeniable, almost as if fate itself has chosen her to fight against the forces of darkness. Yet, despite her resilience, Irene is not invulnerable. The weight of her past battles presses on her, and as she steps into the halls of the boarding school, she knows that something sinister lurks within its walls. Her sharp instincts pick up on the unsettling changes in Maurice, and her growing unease only solidifies when she uncovers the dark history of the school. Still, she does not waver. When the moment comes to face the evil head-on, she does not hesitate. Her faith is her weapon, her belief unshaken even when the odds seem impossible. She is not just fighting for herself, she is fighting for the innocent souls who cannot defend themselves. Alongside Irene is Sister Deborah, a young nun still finding her footing in a world where faith and fear constantly collide. She is not as experienced as Irene, nor does she possess the same supernatural connection, but what she lacks in knowledge, she makes up for in determination. Deborah's journey is one of growth. She starts as someone unsure, questioning whether she is truly meant for this path, but as the events of the film unfold, she finds her inner strength. Through her partnership with Irene, Deborah learns that faith is not about having all the answers but about standing firm in the face of uncertainty. She faces horrors she never imagined, but instead of running, she chooses to fight. Her courage is not born from a lack of fear, but from the decision to act despite it. By the time the final confrontation arrives, she is no longer the hesitant novice she once was. She stands beside Irene, unwavering, ready to face whatever comes their way. Then, there is Maurice, kind-hearted, gentle Maurice, who has always been a protector rather than a fighter. He is a man haunted by something he does not fully understand, a darkness that has followed him since the events at St. Carta. At first, he seems like the same man Irene and Deborah remember, caring, warm, always ready to lend a helping hand. But something is different. His moments of confusion, the sudden shifts in his demeanor, the eerie way the shadows seem to move around him, all signs that something terrible is lurking beneath the surface. Maurice is a tragic figure, a man who has been marked by evil through no fault of his own. He does not want to harm anyone, yet he finds himself losing control, his body no longer his own. The struggle within him is heartbreaking. His humanity fights to resist the entity, but the darkness is relentless. Even as Valak's presence takes hold, there are flickers of the real Maurice, moments where he tries to fight back. His battle is not just physical, it is a war for his soul. And when Irene and Deborah refuse to give up on him, when they stand their ground despite the overwhelming power of the demon, Maurice finds the strength to push back. In the end, his humanity wins. He reclaims himself, though he knows the scars of his possession will never fully fade. His journey is one of survival, a testament to the idea that even in the face of unimaginable darkness, there is always a sliver of light. Beyond the central trio, the film also introduces a cast of supporting characters who add depth to the story. The boarding school's headmistress, Madame Laurent, is a woman bound by duty and tradition, unwilling to acknowledge the unnatural horrors creeping into her school. At first, she dismisses the strange occurrences, preferring to believe in logic rather than superstition. But as the nightmare unfolds, she is forced to confront the truth. Something evil has taken root, and ignoring it will only allow it to spread. Then there are the students, each dealing with their own fears and uncertainties. Among them is Sophie, a girl who becomes entangled in the terrifying events, witnessing firsthand the horrors that plague the school. Her role is small but significant. Through her eyes, the audience experiences the mounting dread, the slow realization that something is terribly wrong. She is the embodiment of innocence caught in the crossfire of an age-old battle between good and evil. And at the center of it all lurks Valak, the demon that has haunted Irene since the beginning. Its presence is felt long before it ever truly reveals itself, its influence spreading like a disease. It does not simply attack, it manipulates, it deceives, it waits for the perfect moment to strike. Unlike other horror villains that rely on brute force, Valak is a master of psychological torment, preying on fears, twisting faith into doubt. The demon's hold over Maurice is its cruelest trick yet. It does not need to destroy its victims outright, it corrupts them, turning them against the people they love. Its presence is a reminder that evil is not always loud and monstrous. Sometimes it is subtle, creeping into the corners of a person's mind, taking control before they even realize what is happening. But despite all its power, despite the terror it spreads, Valak is not invincible. The battle against it is not won with weapons or strength, but with faith. Irene, Deborah, and Maurice prove that even in the face of overwhelming darkness, the human spirit is resilient. Evil can wound, it can haunt, but it cannot truly claim those who refuse to surrender to it. In the end, The Nun II is not just a story about a demonic entity wreaking havoc, it is a story about the people who stand against it. It is about courage in the face of fear, about the choices that define us, and about the enduring power of faith. The making of The Nun II was just as eerie and intriguing as the film itself. The process of bringing the terrifying demon Valak back to life involved not only technical brilliance but also a series of strange, almost supernatural incidents that left even the most skeptical cast and crew members questioning reality. From unexpected occurrences on set to little-known trivia that makes the movie even more fascinating, the production of The Nun II was filled with surprises at every turn. One of the strangest facts about the film revolves around its filming locations. Much like its predecessor, The Nun II was shot in real, historic locations rather than relying solely on studio sets. This decision, while adding authenticity to the film's eerie atmosphere, also meant that the cast and crew found themselves working in places with their own haunted histories. The grand boarding school setting, with its long, shadowed hallways and towering Gothic architecture, wasn't just a constructed backdrop, it was an actual location steeped in mystery. During production, several crew members reported strange sensations while filming in certain parts of the set. Some claimed to feel an inexplicable chill, even when the temperature should have been stable. Others described hearing whispers when no one else was around. While these could have been dismissed as tricks of the mind, the consistency of these experiences left many wondering if they were truly alone during filming. Even more unsettling were the unexplained technical malfunctions that occurred throughout the shoot. Cameras that had been working perfectly fine would suddenly stop functioning, only to work again without any logical explanation. Lights would flicker unexpectedly, sometimes at the most intense moments of filming. On multiple occasions, the crew experienced unexplained power outages, forcing them to pause production. At first, these were written off as simple technical difficulties, but when the pattern continued, some started to joke, or perhaps half believe, that something otherworldly was interfering with the shoot. But it wasn't just the locations that held eerie surprises. The film's lead actors had their own unsettling experiences. Taissa Farmiga, who reprised her role as Sister Irene, has always been open about her deep connection to the horror genre, but even she admitted that filming The Nun II left her with a lingering sense of unease. She spoke about moments when she would suddenly feel as though someone was watching her, only to turn and find no one there. There were also instances when she would hear sounds, like footsteps or faint voices, just beyond the edges of the set. Bonnie Aarons, the actress behind Valak, had a particularly strange experience while getting into character. Aarons, known for her striking and terrifying portrayal of the demon nun, spent hours in makeup and costume to transform into the fearsome entity. But on several occasions, the cast and crew reported feeling a genuine sense of fear whenever she appeared in full costume, even when they knew it was just her. Some described an almost instinctual reaction to look away or feel a sense of dread, as if Valak's presence wasn't entirely fictional. One of the most bizarre moments happened during a break in filming. Aarons, still dressed as Valak, had stepped off set to grab something when she accidentally startled a crew member who hadn't realized she was there. The crew member screamed and ran before realizing it was just the actress in costume. While this seems like a humorous incident, what made it truly eerie was the fact that multiple people later reported seeing a shadowy figure in the area where she had been standing, long after she had left. Aside from the supernatural occurrences, The Nun II also had its share of fascinating trivia that added to the film's legacy. One of the most interesting details is the connection between Taissa Farmiga and the Conjuring universe. Her sister, Vera Farmiga, plays Lorraine Warren in the main Conjuring films, creating a unique familial tie between the two characters. While their characters are not directly related in the storyline, many fans enjoy speculating about possible deeper connections, and the casting choice only fuels that curiosity. Another strange but exciting fact is how the film's design team meticulously recreated Valak's look. While many horror icons undergo changes with each sequel, Valak's appearance remains nearly identical to the first film. The reason? The filmmakers believed that altering her look in any significant way might lessen the impact of her presence. They felt that the fear she inspired in audiences was already so deeply ingrained that any changes might take away from the terrifying effect. To maintain this sense of consistency, the team went to great lengths to ensure every aspect of Valak's design remained precise. The makeup process for Bonnie Aarons was incredibly detailed, requiring hours of work to get every shadow and feature just right. The contact lenses she wore were so intense that they made it difficult for her to see clearly, which only added to the eeriness of her performance. Another little-known detail about the film is how the sound design played a crucial role in crafting its horror. Many of the film's scariest moments were enhanced by subtle audio effects that the audience might not even consciously notice. For example, in scenes where Valak's presence is growing stronger, the filmmakers used infrasound, low-frequency sound waves that create a feeling of unease in the human body. This technique has been used in other horror films before, but The Nun II took it a step further by blending these frequencies with unsettling whispers and distorted vocal effects. One of the most visually striking elements of the film was the use of lighting, particularly in Valak's scenes. The cinematographers played with shadows and negative space to create an almost subconscious fear, making viewers feel as though something was lurking just out of sight. This method was inspired by classic horror techniques, where the less you see, the more your imagination fills in the gaps. Beyond the eerie elements, The Nun II also had its fair share of physically demanding scenes. Several sequences required intricate stunts, including moments where characters were thrown by unseen forces or dragged across rooms. The stunt team worked tirelessly to ensure these moments felt as realistic and terrifying as possible. In one particularly intense scene, Taissa Farmiga had to perform a sequence where she was lifted off the ground by an invisible force. To achieve this effect, a combination of practical harness work and CGI enhancements was used. Despite the serious and terrifying nature of the film, the cast and crew also had moments of levity on set. Between takes, Bonnie Aarons would often break character and joke around, creating a stark contrast between her terrifying on-screen presence and her real-life personality. She even took time to interact with extras and background actors, sometimes playfully scaring them before revealing her friendly demeanor. One last fun fact involves the film's hidden Easter eggs. As part of the larger Conjuring universe, The Nun II contains several subtle references to the other films in the franchise. Sharp-eyed fans have noticed symbols, objects, and even dialogue that connect back to the Warrens and their investigations. These details not only reward longtime fans but also hint at possible future storylines. The production of The Nun II was a journey filled with challenges, surprises, and moments of true eeriness. Whether it was the unexplained events on set, the meticulous care put into Valak's design, or the physical demands of the horror sequences, every aspect of the film contributed to making it a chilling experience for audiences. And perhaps, just maybe, some of that supernatural energy from the set found its way into the final cut, lingering in the shadows, waiting to be discovered by those brave enough to look closer. The Nun II is more than just another entry in the Conjuring universe. It is a film that dives deep into fear itself, weaving a tale of darkness, faith, and survival. While it delivers on spine-chilling moments and eerie set pieces, its true power lies in the way it constructs its horror and the deeper layers beneath its terrifying sequences. Every major event in the film plays a role in building its emotional and psychological weight, making it not just a supernatural horror story but also an exploration of fear, belief, and the battle between good and evil. One of the most significant moments in the film is the reintroduction of Sister Irene. Her journey, set years after the first Nun film, is one of reluctant heroism. From the very beginning, she is haunted, not just by the literal presence of Valak, but by the weight of her past experiences. This immediately creates an emotional connection with the audience, as she is not portrayed as a fearless warrior but as someone who must summon courage despite her growing terror. This is a crucial distinction that makes The Nun II different from other horror sequels. Instead of presenting an unstoppable protagonist ready to take on evil, the film focuses on the inner turmoil of someone who has already faced darkness once and must now confront it again. This theme is emphasized in a particularly unsettling sequence early in the film, where Sister Irene begins experiencing visions. These are not just random supernatural occurrences. They are carefully crafted moments that reinforce the idea that Valak is not simply a monster that attacks its victims physically. It invades their minds, corrupts their faith, and turns their own fears against them. The way these scenes are executed, with disorienting camera movements and an oppressive sense of dread, heightens the psychological horror. These moments are not just about jump scares. They make the audience feel the weight of Sister Irene's terror, immersing them in her struggle. Another key moment in the film's structure is the slow but terrifying unraveling of Maurice's character. Unlike many horror films where possession is an immediate and violent transformation, The Nun II takes a more insidious approach. Maurice does not instantly become a raging force of evil. Instead, his possession is a gradual descent, making it all the more unsettling. This choice adds complexity to his character and to the film itself. It forces the audience to watch as someone they have come to care about slowly loses control over himself, building tension as they realize he may become a danger to those around him. One of the most effective scenes showcasing this transition happens when Maurice, seemingly unaware of what is happening to him, begins experiencing unexplainable moments of lost time and disturbing visions. The way these scenes are shot, often with subtle distortions in the background or eerie reflections in mirrors, creates an atmosphere of paranoia. This is a smart storytelling technique because it doesn't rely on obvious scares but instead builds a sense of unease that lingers long after the scene is over. The film also excels in using its setting to reinforce its themes. The isolated boarding school, with its dark hallways, hidden chambers, and looming architecture, is not just a backdrop. It is an active part of the horror. The setting itself reflects the vulnerability of the characters, particularly the children, who are trapped in a place where the normal rules of safety no longer apply. This setting also plays a crucial role in one of the film's most intense sequences, the moment when Valak's full power begins to manifest. This climactic event, where Valak begins unleashing chaos upon the school, is not just a visually terrifying scene but a moment of thematic significance. The way the demon nun moves through the shadows, warping reality and twisting the very space around her victims, symbolizes the overwhelming power of fear itself. The cinematography in these moments is striking, with sharp contrasts between light and dark, sudden shifts in focus, and disorienting camera angles that make the audience feel trapped along with the characters. What makes this sequence even more powerful is that it is not just about physical horror, it is about testing the character's beliefs and inner strength. Maurice, now almost entirely overtaken by Valak, becomes a direct threat to those around him, forcing Sister Irene into a confrontation that is not just about exorcism but about reclaiming someone who is being lost. This emotional depth adds a layer of tragedy to the horror, making the stakes feel real and personal rather than just another supernatural battle. The final confrontation with Valak is a masterful blend of horror, action, and emotional resolution. Unlike many horror films where the climax is purely about survival, The Nun II takes a different approach. The way the final sequence unfolds reinforces the idea that defeating evil is not just about strength or even knowledge, it is about faith. This ties into one of the film's most consistent themes, the power of belief. Throughout the film, the idea of faith is tested in different ways. For Sister Irene, it is about overcoming doubt and fear to embrace her role in fighting evil. For Maurice, it is about whether he can hold onto his own identity as he is being consumed by darkness. For the children and other residents of the school, it is about whether they can find hope even when surrounded by terror. These themes make the horror elements more impactful because they are not just about external threats but internal struggles. From a critical perspective, The Nun II succeeds in delivering a horror experience that goes beyond surface-level scares. It does not rely solely on jump scares or grotesque imagery to create fear. It builds a sense of dread that lingers, using psychological and atmospheric horror to enhance the experience. The cinematography, sound design, and use of shadows all work together to create an environment where the audience feels just as trapped as the characters. However, the film also takes some creative risks that set it apart from traditional horror sequels. One of the most interesting choices is its approach to Valak. Rather than giving the demon an over-explained backstory or expanding too much on its origins, the film keeps its presence ambiguous. This choice makes Valak even more terrifying because it remains an enigma, a force of evil that cannot be fully understood. In horror, sometimes the scariest things are those that remain partially unknown, and The Nun II understands this perfectly. The reception of the film was shaped by these elements. While some viewers appreciated its slow-building tension and deeper themes, others expected more immediate scares. This divide in reactions highlights the film's unique position. It is not just another jump-scare-heavy horror sequel, but a movie that builds its terror through atmosphere and psychological unease. One of the aspects most praised by audiences was the performance of Taissa Farmiga. Her portrayal of Sister Irene brings emotional depth to the film, making her a protagonist that viewers can connect with. Similarly, Jonas Bloquet's performance as Maurice adds a tragic weight to the story, making his possession one of the most heartbreaking elements of the film. Bonnie Aarons as Valak once again delivers a performance that is purely terrifying, proving why the character remains one of the most iconic figures in modern horror. Ultimately, The Nun II is a film that understands the essence of horror. It is not just about the monsters that lurk in the shadows, but about the fear, doubt, and resilience of those who must face them. Every major event in the film contributes to this idea, creating a story that lingers in the mind long after the credits roll. By blending traditional horror elements with psychological depth and emotional storytelling, it cements itself as a worthy continuation of the Conjuring universe, proving that true terror is not just about what we see, but what we believe. The making of The Nun II was an ambitious endeavor, one that required meticulous planning, eerie set designs, and a dedicated team that understood the essence of supernatural horror. Bringing Valak back to life on the big screen was not just about jump scares and shadowy corridors. It was about crafting an atmosphere that seeps into the audience's psyche, making them feel the terror long after they've left the theater. From the very start, director Michael Chaves knew that this sequel had to elevate the horror of the first film while staying true to the unsettling tone of the Conjuring universe. The challenge was to build a story that not only delivered scares but also expanded the mythology of Valak without demystifying its terrifying presence. For that, the team relied on a combination of practical effects, eerie locations, and a sound design that made silence just as frightening as the loudest scream. Filming took place across multiple European locations, with the majority of the film shot in France. This decision was not just for aesthetic reasons but to create an authentic sense of historical dread. Many of the locations were centuries-old buildings, their stone walls and dimly lit hallways naturally adding to the unsettling atmosphere. The production team scouted abandoned churches, monasteries, and crypts, ensuring that every backdrop felt like a place where something dark had happened, or was about to happen. One of the most chilling locations used in the film was an actual decommissioned monastery. The moment the crew stepped inside, they felt an eerie stillness, as if the building itself had absorbed centuries of whispers and prayers. Some crew members reported feeling cold spots in certain rooms, while others claimed they heard faint, inexplicable noises in the empty hallways. Whether these were tricks of the mind or something more, they certainly added to the unsettling energy that made its way into the final film. Creating the terrifying presence of Valak required a combination of practical effects and subtle digital enhancements. Bonnie Aarons, who reprised her role as the demon nun, once again proved that sometimes the simplest effects are the most effective. Much of Valak's menacing presence was achieved without heavy CGI. Her chilling stare, rigid movements, and looming presence were enough to instill fear. The makeup team spent hours perfecting her ghostly complexion, ensuring that even the smallest details, like the veins beneath her pale skin, were visible under certain lighting conditions. One particularly eerie challenge was filming Valak's movement sequences. The team wanted to avoid making her appear too fluid or exaggerated, which could diminish her otherworldly nature. Instead, they worked with slow, deliberate pacing, sometimes instructing Bonnie Aarons to stand completely still in the background of scenes, barely noticeable at first glance. This technique created a sense of paranoia, where audiences would scan the screen, unsure if she was lurking in the shadows or about to strike. Another fascinating behind-the-scenes story involved the film's use of practical effects for the shadow sequences. Rather than relying entirely on CGI, the crew used a combination of lighting tricks and hidden props to create the illusion of shadows shifting unnaturally. This old-school approach gave the film a more organic, nightmarish feel, as audiences subconsciously picked up on movements that didn't quite align with the normal laws of physics. One of the most challenging scenes to film was the climactic confrontation between Sister Irene and Valak. Unlike standard horror showdowns that rely on physical struggles, this sequence had to balance supernatural terror with emotional intensity. Taissa Farmiga, who played Sister Irene, spent weeks rehearsing for the scene, working closely with the stunt team to ensure that every reaction felt genuine. The way light and shadow interacted in these moments was meticulously planned, with certain practical effects enhancing the supernatural chaos unfolding around them. The film's sound design was another crucial element in crafting its unsettling atmosphere. The team knew that silence could be just as effective as loud, sudden noises, so they played with moments of near-complete quiet before unleashing bone-chilling sounds. One particularly innovative technique involved using distorted recordings of real monks chanting, layered beneath eerie, breath-like whispers. This subtle detail added a sense of spiritual unease, as if unseen forces were always lurking just beyond the edge of perception. One of the more unexpected challenges during filming came from the weather itself. Several outdoor scenes were set in heavy fog, which was meant to add to the film's dreamlike, nightmarish quality. However, the production team quickly learned that controlling real fog was far trickier than anticipated. Some nights, the mist was so thick that cameras could barely capture anything beyond a few feet. Other times, it vanished entirely, forcing the crew to wait for hours or rely on artificial fog machines. A particularly spooky moment occurred during a night shoot in a remote location. As the crew prepared to film, one of the lights suddenly flickered and went out. At first, they assumed it was a simple electrical issue, but when they checked the equipment, everything seemed perfectly functional. Then, as soon as the cameras rolled again, the same light dimmed once more, this time with no apparent explanation. While some laughed it off as coincidence, a few members of the crew couldn't shake the feeling that they weren't entirely alone on set. Aside from the eerie occurrences, there were also lighter, humorous moments behind the scenes. Between takes, Bonnie Aarons would often break character, joking with the cast and crew while still in full Valak makeup. Seeing the terrifying demon nun casually sipping coffee or chatting about weekend plans was a surreal contrast that provided much-needed comic relief. Taissa Farmiga, known for her ability to stay in character even during intense scenes, admitted that occasionally, Bonnie would catch her off guard by suddenly shifting back into Valak's sinister expression when she least expected it. The visual effects team also had their fair share of fun creating some of the film's more supernatural elements. One of their favorite tricks involved using mirror reflections that didn't quite match the movements of the characters. While some of these effects were achieved with digital manipulation, others were done practically, using hidden actors mimicking the movements at slightly different speeds. This old-school illusion added to the film's eerie unpredictability, making viewers question what was real and what was an illusion. When it came to designing the film's final look, the cinematography played a vital role in shaping the overall tone. Director Michael Chaves and cinematographer Tristan Nibby experimented with different lighting techniques to give the Nun II its signature visual style. They leaned into Gothic influences, using deep shadows and high contrasts to create a sense of timeless dread. Certain sequences were deliberately shot with minimal lighting, forcing audiences to strain their eyes, only to be met with something terrifying lurking in the darkness. The marketing team also had fun playing with the film's terrifying imagery. In the months leading up to the release, they orchestrated a viral campaign featuring hidden Valak figures in everyday settings, sometimes subtly blended into posters, other times appearing unexpectedly in teaser videos. This interactive element built anticipation, with fans eagerly dissecting every frame to spot hidden figures they might have otherwise missed. The final product, with all of these elements combined, was a film that didn't just rely on horror cliches but actively played with audience expectations. The production team's dedication to practical effects, psychological horror, and atmospheric tension resulted in a sequel that felt both familiar and fresh. As the credits rolled, many viewers found themselves still gripping their armrests, haunted not just by what they had seen but by the lingering sense that something was watching from the darkness. And perhaps, in some forgotten monastery or abandoned corridor, something was. The world of the Nun II is built upon shadows, whispers, and the overwhelming presence of something unseen lurking just beyond the dim candlelight. Every location, every darkened corridor, every flicker of a flame is carefully chosen to heighten the film's eerie, unsettling atmosphere. The setting itself isn't just a backdrop. It's a living, breathing entity, shaping the characters' fates and dragging the audience into its chilling embrace. From the very beginning, director Michael Chaves knew that the locations in this sequel had to feel even more suffocating and sinister than in the first film. The story demanded a place that felt abandoned by the light, a world where ancient history and unspoken horrors intertwined. For this, the production team scouted some of the most haunting locations in Europe, focusing on Gothic architecture and places with a natural air of decay and mystery. One of the film's primary locations is an old boarding school, a vast, crumbling structure steeped in history and filled with dark corners where the past refuses to stay buried. Unlike a traditional haunted house, this school carries an air of false security. By day, it seems like a place of learning, of rigid discipline, of order. But at night, it transforms into something entirely different. The long hallways stretch endlessly into darkness, the flickering lanterns create shifting shadows, and the distant sound of a door creaking open by itself is enough to send shivers down the spine. The school's chapel, a grand but decayed space, is one of the most visually striking locations in the film. The towering stained-glass windows, depicting saints and biblical figures, cast fractured, multicolored light that dances eerily across the cold stone floors. But even within this sacred space, there is no true refuge. The looming statues, meant to represent divine protection, seem almost to watch with hollow eyes, their expressions unreadable in the dim lighting. It is here that some of the film's most intense moments unfold, with the play of light and shadow creating a surreal, nightmarish quality that lingers long after the scene ends. Cinematographer Tristan Nibby worked closely with Chaves to craft a visual language that amplified the sense of dread in every frame. The choice of color palette was deliberate. Deep blues, sickly yellows, and muted grays dominate the film, creating a world that feels drained of warmth and life. Occasionally, bursts of red appear, used sparingly but effectively, hinting at danger and the ever-present specter of death. Lighting, or rather the absence of it, is one of the film's most powerful tools. The production team relied heavily on practical lighting sources, candles, oil lamps, flickering torches, to create a sense of realism while also making the darkness feel almost alive. The result is a film where the audience, much like the characters, is constantly straining to see what lurks just beyond the glow of the nearest flame. This careful manipulation of light makes the shadows themselves a character in the story, shifting, stretching, and sometimes revealing far more than anyone would like to see. The use of cinematography in The Nun II also plays with perspective in ways that keep the viewer on edge. Many shots are framed to create a sense of claustrophobia, pressing in on the characters and making them feel trapped within the school's ancient walls. Others use wide, sweeping angles to emphasize the vast emptiness of certain spaces, corridors that seem to stretch into infinity, catacombs that swallow the light, staircases that spiral down into unknowable depths. This shifting sense of space creates a feeling of disorientation, making it impossible to predict where the next terror will emerge. One of the film's most effective visual motifs is the use of mirrors and reflections. Mirrors have long been a staple of horror cinema, but The Nun II takes their unsettling nature to another level. In several key moments, characters catch glimpses of movement in a reflection, a flicker of motion that shouldn't be there, a shadow passing behind them when no one else is in the room. Sometimes, their own reflections don't quite move in sync, or the glass distorts their faces just enough to make them look wrong. These subtle distortions add to the creeping unease, making viewers question what's real and what's a trick of the mind. Another striking element of the film's cinematography is the way the camera lingers on seemingly empty spaces. There are moments where a scene holds just a second too long on a darkened hallway, a closed door, or a vacant chair, making the audience feel as though something should be there. This technique plays on the fear of the unknown, making viewers' imaginations run wild, filling the void with whatever horrors they fear most. This setting enhances the feeling of isolation, making it clear that escape is not an option. The characters are trapped, not just within the school, but within something far larger, something ancient and hungry that has been waiting for them. Even the weather plays a role in the film's visual storytelling. Sudden storms arrive without warning, drenching the landscape in heavy rain that turns dirt paths into treacherous swamps. Winds howl through the cracks in old wooden doors, making the candle flames shudder and dance. Lightning flashes at just the right moment, illuminating a figure standing where no one should be, only for the next bolt to reveal an empty space once more. All of these elements, the locations, the cinematography, the lighting, the sound, combine to create an experience that is more than just a series of scares. The Nun II doesn't rely on cheap jump scares or over-the-top effects to terrify its audience. Instead, it builds its horror slowly, layer by layer, using every cinematic tool at its disposal to craft a world where fear seeps into every corner. The result is a film that lingers in the mind, not just because of its terrifying moments, but because of the oppressive, suffocating atmosphere it creates. The setting is more than just a backdrop. It's an active participant in the horror, shaping the story and ensuring that no matter where the characters turn, they are never truly alone. The making of The Nun II was just as thrilling as the film itself, filled with eerie moments, unexpected challenges, and a strong sense of camaraderie among the cast and crew. While the movie brings nightmares to the screen, the atmosphere on set was a mix of dedication, laughter, and, at times, genuine fear as the line between fiction and reality blurred in the most unexpected ways. From the very beginning, the production team knew they had to outdo the first film. The bar was high, and director Michael Chaves, along with the rest of the crew, was determined to create a sequel that wasn't just scarier but also more immersive. Every scene had to feel unsettling, every shadow had to carry the weight of an unseen presence, and every silence had to be deafening. This level of intensity required absolute precision in both performance and technical execution, leading to some unforgettable behind-the-scenes experiences. One of the biggest challenges was choosing the right filming locations. The eerie boarding school in the movie wasn't a set built from scratch. Instead, the team scouted real, historic locations that naturally carried an air of mystery. Much of the filming took place in old European buildings with deep, dark histories, some of which came with their own ghost stories. Cast and crew members reported strange occurrences, from objects moving on their own to unexplained sounds echoing through empty hallways. Some even claimed to have seen fleeting shadows where no one was supposed to be. Actress Taissa Farmiga, who reprised her role as Sister Irene, admitted that there were moments during filming when she felt truly unnerved. In one particular instance, while shooting a scene in the school's chapel, the crew heard a loud, crashing noise from an area that had been locked off. Upon investigation, nothing was found out of place, yet the feeling of being watched became almost unbearable. Farmiga later revealed that she had similar experiences during the first Nun film, making her wonder if something, or someone, was following her between projects. But it wasn't all spine-chilling moments. There was plenty of humor and camaraderie among the cast to balance out the intensity of filming. Jonas Bloquet, who played Frenchie, was known for keeping the set lively. Whether it was playing pranks on his co-stars or breaking into impromptu dance moves between takes, he ensured that the mood never became too heavy. One of his favorite tricks was sneaking up on crew members wearing Valak's terrifying nun habit, delivering unexpected scares even when the cameras weren't rolling. Bonnie Aarons, the actress behind Valak, had a particularly interesting relationship with her terrifying on-screen persona. While her portrayal of the demonic nun is enough to send shivers down anyone's spine, off-camera, she was one of the most energetic and warm people on set. Despite spending hours in makeup, transforming into the horrifying creature audiences fear, she often cracked jokes and engaged in light-hearted conversations, making it even more jarring when she suddenly had to switch back into character. However, Aaron's transformation into Valak wasn't just about the makeup and costume, it was about her physicality. She worked closely with the cinematography team to perfect her eerie movements, ensuring that Valak's presence was felt long before she was fully seen. The crew experimented with lighting tricks and camera angles to make her appear as though she was materializing out of thin air. The result was a character who didn't just look terrifying but moved in ways that made the audience feel uneasy on a subconscious level. The team also faced several unexpected technical difficulties throughout filming. Some of the effects that looked seamless on screen required hours, sometimes days, of trial and error to perfect. One of the most complicated sequences involved a long, tension-filled tracking shot where the camera follows a character through the school's hallways as shadows move unnaturally behind them. The sequence relied on precise coordination between the camera operator, lighting team, and actors, as any mistimed movement could ruin the illusion. It took nearly 20 takes to get it just right, but the final result was one of the film's most unsettling moments. The use of practical effects was another major focus. While CGI was used sparingly to enhance certain elements, Chaves wanted as much of the horror as possible to feel tangible. The production team built intricate sets with hidden mechanisms to create physical scares, from doors slamming on their own to objects flying across the room. In one particularly shocking scene, a piece of furniture was supposed to move suddenly, but during rehearsal it shifted before the cue was given, sending everyone scrambling. No explanation was ever found. Despite the eerie atmosphere, one of the most rewarding aspects of filming was the deep connection among the cast. Many had worked together before, creating an unspoken trust that allowed them to fully commit to their performances. Farmiga and Aarons, despite their on-screen conflict, developed a strong friendship, often discussing their favorite horror films between takes. The entire cast and crew had weekly gatherings where they would share stories, review footage, and sometimes even play harmless pranks on one another, usually involving Bonnie Aarons unexpectedly stepping into a dimly lit room wearing Valak's habit. The film's sound design also played a massive role in crafting its terrifying atmosphere, and that process started right on set. The team experimented with unconventional methods to create some of the most unsettling noises. Instead of relying entirely on post-production sound effects, they used natural recordings, fingernails scraping against old wood, whispers captured in echoing hallways, and even the distorted sounds of distant church bells. Some of these recordings came from the real locations, adding an extra layer of authenticity. One of the most intense sequences in the film was also one of the most grueling to shoot. Without giving away spoilers, it involved a character being pursued through a labyrinthine series of tunnels, lit only by a flickering candle. The sequence required dozens of takes, not just because of the complex camera movements but also because of the unpredictability of working with real flames. At one point, a gust of wind from an unseen source extinguished the candle completely, leaving the actor momentarily disoriented in the pitch-black set. The moment was so unsettling that the final cut ended up using that very take, as the fear in the actor's eyes was completely genuine. Despite all the challenges, the hard work paid off. When the final scenes wrapped, there was a bittersweet feeling on set. Many of the cast and crew had spent months immersed in this eerie, nightmarish world, and stepping back into reality was almost surreal. To celebrate, the entire team gathered for a final dinner, where even Bonnie Aarons, now free from Valak's terrifying visage, joined in on the laughter and storytelling. Looking back, the making of The Nun II was just as unforgettable as the film itself. It was a project where passion met the supernatural, where laughter balanced out fear, and where even the most seasoned horror filmmakers found themselves questioning what was real and what was part of the illusion. And perhaps, in some dark corner of the set, something unseen was watching all along. The world of The Nun II is more than just a terrifying backdrop for supernatural horror. It is a film rich with themes and symbolism that add depth to the chilling narrative. Beneath the eerie corridors, flickering candlelight, and ominous whispers, the movie weaves a story that explores faith, fear, trauma, and the eternal battle between good and evil. Every scene, every character, and every haunting presence is layered with meaning, making the horror resonate on a deeper level. One of the most powerful themes in the film is the struggle between faith and doubt. Sister Irene, played by Taissa Farmiga, is a character who embodies unwavering faith, but even she is tested by the darkness she faces. Her journey is not just about battling a demonic force, but about reaffirming her own beliefs in a world where evil feels overwhelming. The film constantly poses the question, how does one hold on to faith when confronted with unimaginable horrors? This theme is amplified in the setting itself, an abandoned boarding school, once a place of learning and structure, now overtaken by fear and despair. The contrast between light and darkness is an ever-present motif, both visually and thematically. Throughout the movie, shadows stretch unnaturally, swallowing entire hallways and creating an oppressive sense of doom. Light, whether from a candle, a flickering bulb, or even the dawn breaking through the windows, is a symbol of hope. Yet, light is never permanent. It is constantly under threat, just as the character's hope is constantly challenged. The cinematography reinforces this idea, using deep, engulfing shadows to make every space feel like it is teetering on the edge of darkness. The character of Frenchie, or Maurice, played by Jonas Bloquet, represents another crucial theme, the loss of self. Maurice is a man possessed, yet he is still aware of what is happening to him. He struggles against the evil inside him, much like a person battling inner demons, whether it be guilt, trauma, or regret. His possession serves as a metaphor for how darkness can creep into one's soul, slowly eroding one's identity. This idea is especially haunting because it mirrors real-life struggles with addiction, mental illness, or the consequences of past sins. Symbols of religion and faith are, of course, central to The Nun II, but the film also subverts them in terrifying ways. Crosses, typically symbols of protection, are shown flipping upside down, burning, or even bleeding. Holy water and prayers, the traditional weapons against darkness, are not always enough to hold back the evil. This inversion of sacred symbols is more than just a horror trope. It represents the idea that faith alone is sometimes not enough. One must also act, fight, and be willing to face the darkness head-on. The boarding school itself serves as a metaphor for isolation and repressed fears. Schools are supposed to be places of safety, yet in The Nun II, it becomes a prison where the characters are trapped with an ancient evil. The students and teachers within its walls feel abandoned, forgotten by the outside world, much like how fear and trauma can make a person feel isolated even when surrounded by others. Valak, the demonic nun, is not just a terrifying entity. She is the embodiment of fear itself. She does not simply attack her victims physically. She preys on their deepest insecurities, their past traumas, and their hidden doubts. Her presence forces characters to confront their past, to relive their worst moments, making her a symbol of how unresolved pain can manifest in horrifying ways. There is also an underlying theme of legacy and fate. The story suggests that evil never truly disappears. It lingers, waiting for the right moment to strike again. This ties back to the greater Conjuring universe, where the battle between good and evil is a never-ending cycle. The film hints that some characters are destined to face darkness, whether they want to or not, reinforcing the idea that history has a way of repeating itself. Even the smallest details in the film carry symbolic weight. The rosaries clutched in trembling hands, the peeling walls of the school, the whispers that seem to come from nowhere, they all serve as reminders of the past, of things left unsaid and unresolved. The film crafts an atmosphere where every object, every shadow, and every sound feels like it holds a secret waiting to be uncovered. Through all of these themes and symbols, The Nun II becomes more than just a horror movie. It is a story about belief, about how fear can take root and grow, and about the power of confronting one's demons, whether they be supernatural or deeply personal. The horror in the film is not just about what lurks in the dark, but about what lurks within us, waiting to be faced. The Nun II is a film that thrives on atmosphere, suspense, and a relentless sense of dread, all of which are crafted meticulously through its filmmaking techniques. Every shadow, every flickering light, and every chilling sound is a calculated choice, designed to immerse the audience in a world where fear lurks just beyond sight. The film's success is not just in its storytelling, but in how the technical aspects bring that story to life. From cinematography to sound design, from editing to set construction, each element contributes to making The Nun II a terrifying and memorable horror experience. The cinematography plays a crucial role in establishing the film's eerie atmosphere. Director of photography Tristan Nibby uses a combination of deep shadows and carefully framed wide shots to create a sense of unease. The camera lingers just long enough in dimly lit hallways and desolate spaces, giving the audience the impression that something is always watching. The slow pans and creeping dolly shots amplify the tension, making even empty rooms feel oppressive. The use of negative space, where the frame appears empty but feels like it shouldn't be, adds to the paranoia, as viewers instinctively scan the background for lurking horrors. One of the most striking visual choices in The Nun II is its manipulation of lighting. Darkness is used as a living entity, swallowing up characters and distorting their surroundings. Candles and dim lanterns serve as the only sources of illumination in many scenes, creating stark contrasts that make every movement more dramatic. The flickering of flames or the sudden burst of light from a match not only heightens tension but also plays with the audience's expectations. Just when they think they see something, the light shifts, revealing something else entirely. This interplay between light and dark makes even the quietest moments feel suffocating. The film's color palette further enhances its ominous tone. Muted blues, grays, and deep blacks dominate the screen, reinforcing the cold and lifeless atmosphere of the setting. Occasional bursts of red, whether from blood, fire, or eerie stained glass reflections, serve as visual cues for danger, making those moments feel even more jarring. The deliberate desaturation of colors makes the world feel drained of warmth, as though hope itself has been stripped away. Camera angles also contribute significantly to the film's psychological effect. Low-angle shots of Valak, the demonic nun, make her presence even more imposing, as if she looms over the audience, inescapable and all-powerful. Dutch angles, where the camera tilts slightly, create an unsettling sense of imbalance, making viewers feel as though something is constantly off-kilter. These subtle choices manipulate the audience's subconscious, ensuring that even before a jump scare, they already feel on edge. Speaking of jump scares, The Nun II employs them strategically rather than relying on them excessively. The build-up to each scare is stretched just long enough to make the audience squirm, with the tension often breaking in unexpected ways. Sudden movement in the periphery, an out-of-focus figure shifting in the background, or a sound that doesn't match what's on screen, all of these techniques keep viewers guessing. The unpredictability of these moments prevents the film from feeling formulaic, ensuring that even seasoned horror fans are caught off guard. Sound design is another critical element that elevates the horror experience. Silence is used masterfully throughout the film, allowing natural ambient noises, dripping water, creaking wood, distant whispers, to fill the void. This makes every sudden noise, whether it be a sharp breath or an unseen entity slamming a door, feel like a jolt to the system. The soundscape is layered with unsettling frequencies, barely perceptible but enough to create a subconscious sense of dread. The use of infrasound, low-frequency sounds that humans can feel but not necessarily hear, adds a physical element to the terror, making some moments feel almost suffocating. The film's score, composed by Marco Beltrami, blends orchestral horror with haunting choral elements, reinforcing the religious undertones of the story. The eerie chants woven into the background music remind the audience of the film's supernatural themes, making even quiet moments feel ominous. The score builds gradually, never overwhelming the scene but always lurking, waiting to strike at the right moment. At times, the music cuts out entirely, leaving only the raw, natural sounds of the environment, heightening the realism and intensity of the fear. Editing is another tool that shapes the film's pacing and mood. The film alternates between slow, lingering shots that build suspense and rapid, disorienting cuts that mirror the character's panic. Cross-cutting between different locations adds to the sense of impending doom, as the audience is constantly aware that danger is closing in from multiple angles. Flashbacks and dream sequences are seamlessly integrated, blurring the line between reality and nightmare, further disorienting the viewer. The special effects and practical effects work together to make the supernatural horrors feel tangible. The physical makeup and prosthetics used to bring Valak to life ensure that she is not just a CGI creation but a presence that feels real, her skin texture and eerie eyes making her all the more terrifying. Subtle CGI enhancements, such as unnatural movements or flickering appearances, add to her otherworldly nature without making her feel artificial. The sets themselves are crucial in immersing the audience in the film's world. The abandoned boarding school, with its decaying walls, labyrinthine hallways, and ominous staircases, is a character in its own right. Every corner of the environment tells a story, from old paintings that seem to follow the characters with their eyes to hidden chambers that hold unspeakable secrets. The production design meticulously crafts a setting that feels both historically rich and deeply cursed. On the box office front, The Nun II capitalized on the massive success of its predecessor and the larger Conjuring universe. The anticipation surrounding the film ensured a strong opening weekend, drawing both horror fans and casual viewers eager for a good scare. The film's marketing played heavily on its connection to The Nun, 2018, and the Conjuring franchise, using viral campaigns and eerie teaser trailers to build hype. The return of Taissa Farmiga as Sister Irene further attracted audiences, as fans were eager to see her character's continued battle against Valak. Despite the challenges of horror sequels often struggling to maintain the same level of impact, The Nun II managed to deliver a cinematic experience that felt fresh while staying true to the franchise's core themes. The combination of strong visual storytelling, unsettling sound design, and masterful pacing made it a standout entry in the series. Ultimately, the film's success lies in its ability to merge technical expertise with effective storytelling. Every frame, every sound, and every cut is designed to pull the viewer deeper into its nightmarish world, ensuring that the fear lingers long after the credits roll. Through a careful blend of old-school horror techniques and modern filmmaking advancements, The Nun II cements itself as a chilling and unforgettable experience. The Nun II thrives on the chilling performances of its cast, each actor bringing depth to their character while navigating the relentless horror of Valak's return. Their commitment to the roles, both physically and emotionally, elevates the film beyond just another supernatural horror entry. But beyond what we see on screen, the actors' experiences on set and their reflections in interviews reveal just how intense and demanding the filming process was. And, of course, the audience, true horror fans and casual viewers alike, played a major role in shaping the film's legacy through their reactions and reviews. Taissa Farmiga reprises her role as Sister Irene, a character whose journey is central to the film's haunting narrative. Farmiga's performance is a masterclass in restrained terror, embodying both vulnerability and quiet strength. In interviews, she shared how she prepared for the role, delving deep into the character's emotional and spiritual struggles. She mentioned that stepping back into Irene's shoes felt natural but also daunting, as the sequel aimed to push the character further than before. Farmiga revealed that some of the scenes were physically exhausting, particularly those involving intense chases or confrontations with Valak. Storm Reid, joining the franchise as Sister Deborah, brings a fresh dynamic to the story. Her character is a skeptic, someone who questions the supernatural elements that others take for granted. Reid spoke about how this role was an exciting challenge, as she had to play someone who resists fear while slowly becoming entangled in the horror around her. She recalled moments on set where practical effects made the scares feel all too real, such as doors slamming shut unexpectedly or eerie sounds creeping through the set. The authenticity of the horror, she said, made her reactions in certain scenes completely genuine. Jonas Bloquet returns as Maurice, also known as Frenchie, a character whose fate was teased in The Nun and now plays a much larger role in the sequel. Bloquet's performance is especially nuanced, as his character is both a tragic figure and a vessel for something far more sinister. He spoke about the physical demands of the role, particularly as his character undergoes increasingly terrifying transformations. Some of his scenes required heavy prosthetics and precise movements to capture the unsettling nature of possession. Bloquet admitted that watching himself on screen in those moments was unsettling, as the special effects team had created such a disturbingly realistic transformation. Bonnie Aarons, the actress behind Valak, is arguably one of the most crucial forces behind the Nun II's terror. Despite being heavily disguised beneath makeup and costume, Aarons' performance is what makes Valak such a terrifying presence. She moves with an unnatural stillness, her expressions subtle but deeply unnerving. In interviews, Aarons has spoken about how she approaches playing the demonic nun, not just as a monster, but as an entity with intelligence and malice. She revealed that staying in character between takes sometimes added to the eerie atmosphere on set, as cast and crew members would occasionally catch glimpses of her standing silently in the shadows. The production team also had plenty to say about how the actors helped shape the film. Director Michael Chaves praised the cast for their dedication, especially considering the physically and mentally draining nature of horror filmmaking. He explained that many of the film's scariest moments relied on practical effects and real performances rather than CGI, which meant that the actors had to react to real-time scares. This, he said, made the horror feel more immersive, not just for the audience but for everyone involved in the production. Aside from the cast's experiences, audience reactions played a significant role in defining the Nun II's reception. Horror fans are known for being vocal about what works and what doesn't, and the film sparked plenty of discussion. One of the most immediate responses came from those who saw the film in theaters. Social media quickly filled with posts about audience members screaming or jumping at certain scenes, with some claiming that even seasoned horror fans were caught off guard. Many praised the film's atmosphere, saying that it felt like stepping into a nightmare. Unpredictable, immersive, and deeply unsettling, however, the film also received mixed reactions regarding its pacing. Some viewers felt that certain moments built suspense effectively but didn't always lead to a satisfying payoff. Others appreciated the slow burn approach, arguing that it made the eventual scares hit harder. One of the most talked about elements of the film was Valak's presence. Fans noted that, unlike many horror villains who are overused to the point of losing their fear factor, Valak remains terrifying precisely because of how she is presented. The way the film plays with shadows and silence made her appearances feel more like an intrusion, something unnatural breaking into the real world. Some viewers compared the experience to the first time they saw The Conjuring's Crooked Man or Insidious' Red-Faced Demon. Memorable, chilling, and something that lingers in the mind long after the movie ends. Another major point of discussion was the character development. Many fans appreciated that The Nun II didn't just rely on scares but also deepened the story of its characters. Sister Irene's journey resonated with many, as she continued to struggle with her faith and the burden placed upon her. Frenchie's arc, in particular, drew strong reactions. Many viewers found his storyline tragic and unsettling, with some even comparing his possession to the slow loss of identity seen in classic horror films. Critics had their own take on the film, with some praising its cinematography and commitment to practical effects, while others felt it didn't break enough new ground. Many reviewers agreed that the film excelled in its atmosphere, with carefully crafted visuals that enhanced the dread. The lighting, set design, and sound were all highlighted as elements that made The Nun II stand out from typical horror sequels. However, some critics pointed out that while the film was visually striking, it occasionally leaned too much on horror tropes that seasoned audiences could predict. The jump scares, though effective, sometimes followed familiar patterns, leading some to feel that the film could have taken more risks in how it delivered its horror. Despite these critiques, The Nun II performed strongly at the box office, proving that the Conjuring universe still has a devoted following. Horror fans are known for showing up in droves for sequels and spin-offs, and The Nun II was no exception. The combination of its connection to the larger franchise, its terrifying lead villain, and its dedicated cast made it a film that audiences wanted to experience on the big screen. As the discussions continue, one thing is clear: The Nun II has left a mark, both as a continuation of Valak's reign of terror and as a film that showcases the power of strong performances and immersive horror filmmaking. Whether audiences walked away thrilled, scared, or even slightly disappointed, they all walked away talking about it. And in the world of horror, that's exactly what makes a film memorable. The Nun II is more than just another entry in the Conjuring universe. It's a film that continues the terrifying legacy of Valak while deepening the story of those caught in its wake. From its chilling atmosphere to the compelling performances of its cast, every element works together to create a horror experience that lingers long after the credits roll. Looking back, we've explored every facet of the film, diving into its intricate plot, its unsettling themes, and the performances that brought these characters to life. Sister Irene's harrowing journey, Frenchie's tragic fate, and the overwhelming presence of Valak all contributed to the film's emotional and psychological impact. The cinematography and setting played a crucial role in enhancing the horror, using shadow and silence as effectively as any jump scare. The film's reliance on practical effects over CGI made the horror feel tangible, allowing audiences to fully immerse themselves in the eerie world it created. Beyond the screen, the behind-the-scenes stories provided fascinating insights into the filmmaking process. From the physical and mental toll on the cast to the creative techniques used by the director and crew, every detail added depth to what we saw on screen. The dedication of the actors, especially Taissa Farmiga and Bonnie Aarons, helped elevate The Nun II beyond typical supernatural horror, making the terror feel grounded and real. We also took a closer look at audience reactions, which ranged from thrilled to terrified. Some fans praised the film's atmosphere and its ability to build suspense, while others debated the effectiveness of its pacing and scares. Love it or not, one thing is undeniable: The Nun II sparked conversations, and in the world of horror, that's always a sign of an impactful film. The film's success at the box office further solidified its place within the Conjuring universe. Despite varying opinions on its approach to horror, The Nun II proved that audiences still crave stories set in this eerie, supernatural world. And with the way the film ended, leaving room for more chilling tales to unfold, fans are already speculating about where the story might go next. As we wrap up this deep dive, one thing is certain: Valak isn't done haunting audiences yet. Whether in future sequels or through lingering nightmares, the Demon Nun has cemented itself as one of the most unforgettable horror antagonists in recent years. If you enjoyed this breakdown, don't forget to hit that like button. It helps more horror fans discover this content. And if you haven't already, subscribe for more in-depth movie analysis, behind-the-scenes stories, and all things cinema. Thanks for joining this journey into the darkness of The Nun II. Until next time, stay curious and stay scared.